All right, first thing, you got to take out the screws, the little screws, round back plate, and then these two back here, and then you'll be able to raise this and pop it out. It's a little bit tough, so you just kind of don't pull too hard, but pull a little bit harder and it'll really release. It's just the thermal pads holding the back plate onto the VRAM chips. Then you're gonna go ahead and remove this thing. This is just gonna be 4 screws. It's gonna be like that, and then you're gonna have 4 screws. Oh man, I don't want to drop this. Then you're gonna have 4 screws at the back here. You just take those screws out, and then you'll be able to take out the front panel, or the back panel, or whatever, this thing. Alright, and then what you're gonna do is hold it by the PCIe socket or PCIe slot, and then just kind of move it out like that. Like that. And then don't pull too hard because right now it's not connected. But you will have these 2 plugs here. Right, so you're gonna unplug those 2, and then you'll be left with your heatsink and your actual GPU. Now let's disassemble the heatsink. So what you're gonna do is take out 3 screws on this side, and then 3 more screws, or 2 more screws on this side. Alright, so I'm going to do that and then I'll be right back. Alright, so now after all 5 screws are out, you're just going to take this little piece here and pull it up. And there you go. Now, the first thing that we're going to do is clean around these areas here. So around here and around here, and obviously the actual chip. All that old thermal paste, we're going to clean all that up, clean the surroundings, and then we're going to add thermal paste around this so that this metal can make better contact with the heatsink and take the heat from this thing, which right now is the only thing cooling the VRAM chips on this side, and put it into the heatsink. So let's do that. Alright, so before putting any new pads or any new thermal paste on, let's finish up removing the old pads and cleaning up the old thermal paste. So if you flip this metal thing around, you'll find 1 long pad here, a couple of pads here, and then 1 long pad there. And then obviously you have the pads for your VRAMs, and then your main GPU. So that you're just going to use what I use is just some isopropyl alcohol and this, and make sure it's a good one so it doesn't leave any lint. And yeah, so to remove these pads, what you can do is use a plastic, not a metal. Please do not use metal on your chips or your GPU. And then you're just gonna kind of pull it up. Don't press too hard. You're just gonna kind of find your way around it and just pull up like that. Just like that. Alright. Okay. So you're just gonna keep doing that for the rest of the chip. And then once we're done, I'll show you what to do. Alright, so the pads are off. Here's what came out. And now we're gonna go ahead and clean up the everything with some isopropyl alcohol. So here's the back side here before the cleanup. And I'm gonna do a bit of a cleanup here, and I'll be right back. Alright, everything is relatively clean. There you go. It looks worse because of the flash, but you really don't have to get it that perfect. Just clean enough so you don't have big chunks of old pads on top of the chips. But it's clean. Now we're gonna move on to cutting your thermal pads and putting them on top of your chips. So let's go do that. Alright, so those are the pads, and now we're gonna obviously remove the other side of the pads, so don't forget that, otherwise this would be very dumb. So you put them down, you press them down a little bit, and then you kind of take out the other side of the plastic, And I'm going to do that for the rest of this chip. So all right, so now we're going to go ahead and add the thermal paste to both the GPU, and we're going to do that really quickly here. And now we're going to add it to this other piece here. Now this piece didn't have thermal paste on it before, and this is kind of part of the upgrade here. So we're just going to do a long line. Like we're just gonna do a square. Goes all the way around this. It's hard to do it with one hand, so pardon me if I'm doing it. All right, and then a little bit more here. Yeah, I think this thing is dead now. Yeah, tube's dead. Gonna have to get another one, but you get the point. Good amount of thermal paste, and then yeah, tube's dead. Need to get more thermal paste. All right, so now we're gonna put this thing back together, the actual heatsink. So we're just gonna lay it on top, just like that. Make sure the screw standoffs for, well, first thing, make sure these cables go in the holes here. Okay, first one in, second one in. It's really hard to do with one hand. Okay, there you go. The back part's in too. There you go. There you go. All right, there you go. So as you can see, as soon as this thing gets a little bit of pressure, you'll be able to see the thermal paste kind of ooze out around there. Right now we're fine. Yeah, you can see a little bit there. So that's the point, really, to have thermal paste touching that. All right, so I'm gonna put this back together and be right back. All right, here we go. So we put the heatsink back together. All 5 screws are on, and now we connected the 2 fans, or the 2 fan pins, and now we're just gonna drop the actual graphics card on top of the heatsink. So you'll see you have these little pokey thingies around. So make sure it lines up with the screw holes and everything. And then once it's lined up, the first thing that we'll do is screw in the 4 screws for the heatsink. So the 4 screws with the little springs here. We're gonna screw that in first. Alright, I'm gonna screw that in. I may or may not have skipped a step, but I went ahead and put the thermal pads on the back there, and now we are on to the last step, which is, oh, actually I almost forget this thing. Almost to last step. So I'm gonna put this thing on, and then I'm gonna put this thing on, and then we'll go to the next. All right, now last but most certainly not least will be the heatsink on the back plate. So what I did is I put 2 strips of thermal pads, 1 on each side of the GeForce RTX logo, and then on the middle I put a piece of thermal adhesive. It's probably not necessary, but I wouldn't like for this heatsink to fall inside my case, so just a little bit of security. It's a pretty heavy thing, so it's probably not going to do much, but it's better than nothing. So we're just going to lay it on top there. Alright, make sure that it's lined up there. Now, you would preferably not do it outside of the case, so what we're going to do, actually, is put the GPU inside of the computer, and then put the heatsink on top of the back plate. So this is going to take a second here. Alright, make sure that it's in, and now put the heatsink right on top there. Okay, so just like that. There you go. All right, so now I'm gonna press it in a little bit so the thermal adhesive can stick to it. And there you go. I guess the thermal adhesive isn't really doing much right now, but this is really gonna help with thermals. And let's turn it on, see how it does. Okay, here we go. So
121 mega hash, 94 degrees on the memory, and these are the settings, basically maxed out. Pretty good, pretty good, pretty good. 122, 121, 94. I just had my AC on, but here's it's basically the same thing that I had before, but with the upgrade on the pads and the thermal paste, I think the next thing would be to add a heatsink on the side here. So some sort of heatsink. I think it should be here tomorrow, but adding a long heatsink to the side there, because it is still really hot. So if I can get a long heatsink in there, I might be able to lower it by a couple degrees more. And yeah, so there you go, guys. 94 degrees. I think ambient temperature is 96 degrees. I think ambient temperature is maybe about 75 or 78 degrees right now. There you go. Thanks for watching.